Sure thing. So I think just to kick it off, the whole purpose here is that anybody can create content, right? So whatever you're interested in, whatever you're passionate about, you could start from there. So if we could just start with the chat room and everybody just type in something that they're passionate about that they would start a podcast about or a vlog about, drop it in the comment section right now. I'm gonna start to read off some of those things. But so very cool. So I see film, keep them coming. I'm going to go over here some of the slides. So what inspires you and drives your creativity? So think about the audience, why they would care about your show, and what name would grab their attention, right? So I'm going to start reading off here a little bit. I see soccer, fashion, food, volleyball, dance, writing, sports analytics. Me too. My friends, ocean life, Shakespeare, gaming, old music, that's interesting, sports, graphic art, technology, keep them coming. I see a lot of sports on here.
Write them down on a sheet of paper because we're going to continue this. So if everyone can have a piece of paper and just write down what their idea is, broad strokes, that would be great too because we're going to come back to it.
Yes, we're going to come right back to it. So in terms of picking a topic, that's how we go. And then here at the bottom, we have record yourself talking about it with friends and reflect back on that recording.
So the idea here really is that by pitching it to your friends and by actually recording yourself doing so, and right now with the pandemic, it's a perfect place to do it because you can record your Zoom. So you can FaceTime or you can Zoom your friends or your grandma, whoever it is that you think is the likely audience, and you can watch that back to see, well, what are they not telling you? What are they really telling you with their body language? Are they leaning in? Are they kind of interested or not interested? And you're going to learn a lot about people's reactions by watching their body language, not just listening to what their words are. So I had poor Jason do this. I actually was going to have him on the spot, and he wouldn't do it. So I asked him to video himself talking about his topic and his audience. So Jason, I'm sorry, I have to share it. I know I didn't ask your permission, but we're going to share it.
Go for it. Go for it. This is my little take.
My name is Jason Rodriguez, and my blog is called The Daily Beat. Here's the Daily Beat. All right. And on my blogs, I interview popular drummers from YouTube. So today, I'm interviewing Mr. Tony Royster Jr. He's calling in right now. Tony?
It's great. And you can watch people on Zoom. Are they leaning in? Are they interested? And what was nice about that also is you see how friendly and everyone can relate to you. So it's great. And by the way, you've got some skills on the drum set.
I try.
All right. So once we have our topic and we've thought about our audience, we can go to the next step. So obviously in a normal class setting, we would take a lot more time to really finesse the topic and test it out on people. But if everyone can just spend 2 minutes just writing down, making sure that they have a topic and they've listed who is their audience and why would they care about your podcast. Okay, so we're going to give you just actually 60 seconds left now to go ahead and do that. And then also, if you have any idea of what name would grab their attention, write that down too. For anyone that wants to share on the chat, please, please, please do share. And if you're too shy to do so publicly, it's okay. You can give it to us privately and we'll make it anonymous. But it's really worthwhile. If you're all here for vlogging and podcasting, I'm assuming you already have an idea of what topic you could use.
Totally.
All right, so we have another installment from Lauren. Let's watch it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Zima. Welcome to episode 2. So you picked a topic. Now, how are you going to deliver on your content? Let's talk through some examples. Maybe you want to discuss current events. Well, for that, you would need to keep up with the news. You could also interview guests on your vlog or podcast and discuss your topic with them. But remember, this will require you to find people to interview, which is pretty steady work, and you'll want to make sure you research them so that you are prepared. Have your questions ready. Now, if you really love research, let's talk about how things might go if you're interested in research journalism. This would mean you'd look into something, like an event or an organization, and tell a story about it based on fact, which you can do all on your own. You could even talk about your favorite topic with just a friend. That could be your whole vlog or podcast, you and a friend. But if you do this, you need to come up with a new way to discuss the topic in every episode to keep things interesting for your listeners or viewers. Say you plan to talk about movies. Well, pick a new movie each time. Now, you could totally go the other way. Maybe you want a script, a drama, or a comedy for your content. Try this. Watch some blogs or listen to podcasts that are also about your topic and find out the format that is the most common. That might help you get some ideas and keep framing things. Remember, you don't want to copy anyone else, but it is okay to get inspiration from other people. Keep going. I'll see you in the next episode.
All right, so picking a format. Jason, I'm going to be testing your knowledge as to how well you know the formats. So we talked a little bit about interviews. Straightforward enough, right?
Yeah.
One host interviewing a different person every week. It's usually, you usually have a point of view of where you want the conversation to go, but you're actively listening. Current events is what?
Current events is what's happening right now. What's hot? What's in the loop? What can we talk about that's present right now?
That's right. It's 2 to 3 hosts usually, and they're talking about what's happening right now or recently. Research journalism requires some kind of an arc. So you're researching a topic, and that's usually narrated and with a single host. Although you can incorporate within the research journalism, you can incorporate bits of interviews and bits of current events and topical discussions and so forth into the research journalism format. Then, of course, I just talked about topical discussion. That's similar to current events, except that it's not current, right? So that is now it doesn't have to be recent. It can be something like old movies or old fashion or music of the 80s or sports of the 60s. I don't know. And then scripted comedy and drama is its own format, and that is obviously you do have to script that out. You can do something improv-y, but it speaks for itself. So think about which format would best suit your topic. And we don't really have the luxury right now of like researching other people who've got similar topics, but if you can think about your topic that you wrote down and your audience and so forth, and pick one of these formats that you would use as your main format. So we're going to give you guys a few minutes, and if anyone wants to share in the chat, if I've missed anything, I'm happy to hear about other formats too. These are kind of the main ones that came up for us, but we definitely want to hear from you. So if you guys have any questions or you have any suggestions for other formats, or you have a favorite format, please let us know in the chat. But write down which format you would choose.
Sure. And I think in addition to that, Nadine, it adds a lot of, everybody who does research on a topic, they could take a special angle to their personal blog by either making the questions comedic or adding their own flair, and that's what makes blogs special. And so I think there's a point to be made that researching the topics very well has a lot to do with the outcome of how successful and how good the blog is going to be, because the better research you do, the better questions you can ask on the guest and so on and so forth. So just wanted to make that point in addition too.
You do actually, that's a really great point, which is the authenticity. What is it that you bring to the table, and how natural can you have a conversation, right? It's the charisma of the host, or the hosts, I should say. I think we had some more chats come in, so you want to read some?
Yeah, I'll definitely read them. So people are saying research journalism, topical discussion. Some people are saying a mix of interviews and current events is their preference. Interviews, current events, discussions, current events, interviews. So it seems like a lot of people enjoy the interview format as well as the current event format. So it seems like those are the popular ones. Interviews, scripted comedy, some more scripted comedy. So it seems like a lot of interviews and comedy content seems to be the favorite here so far.
Great. And then when we think about branding, that's the second piece of this. You know, you think about what logo and what messaging, and I really like to think about what experience you want your audience to go on. What do you want them to feel, right? And so everything that you add to this, whether it's branding or your logo, or by the way, music, like the intro and outro music, the beats that you take between each format is really, really important because it's going to affect how it makes your audience feel. So as just a quick exercise, we would love you to think about what music might make sense for the intro and outro of your topic. So if, for example, if I am going to be doing a vlog, on opera and weird places and making people feel, just shocking people by singing opera in like the library or at the zoo or on a bus maybe, or and I have to think about all those sort of things. The end result is I want people to be shocked, and I want people to it's a little bit comedic because it's reactionary. So I would want to pick some kind of music that is either super dramatic or very comedic in feel. So maybe a ukulele song could work really well for that. I actually wrote a song once called Granola Dole, which would work really well for that. I'm curious to know what other people have suggested, and I would love everybody to write down what music might go with their format and topic, and put it on their sheet of paper.
Sounds good.
All right, the next piece, moving on to the third piece, also Lauren Zima will watch this and move on.
Hey guys, I'm Lauren Zima, and this is episode 3. Now that you know your topic and your format, it's time to plan things out. This is the most important part. If you put in lots of work planning now, I promise everything else will be easier later. So think about how you want each show of yours to be structured. Think about some things like this. Is there an intro? Are there different sections within the show? For instance, if you are interviewing a person in each episode, do you begin with the intro, or do you maybe just want to talk about some other stuff first? Maybe you like to end every episode with a fun game with your guest. Now, once you've got the structure of your show together, do a rehearsal, record a trial run. You don't have to be perfect and do each section properly. Just record the episode, get through one, move from section to section, try things out. This will really help you see if the format flows nicely, or if it might be difficult or awkward to get from one place in your show to another. This is your last step before making your first episode, and it's key. So get ready to rehearse, take your time, and have fun.
All right, power of planning. Can't stress it enough. So because of the first 3, we sort of rushed through the first 3. So this is where you really flesh it out, right? So we think about, we've already talked about who your audience is and why they like it, and you've written those things down. But think about how long that show might be, right? You've picked your format. Now we can finesse it a little bit more. Well, what exactly, we've picked an overall format, but how are we going to move from the different beats, from beat 1 to beat 2, so forth? How long will that show be? How often do you want to release it? And knowing that, for example, if you're using the interview format, it's going to be a lot harder for you. Well, sometimes it becomes quite difficult to find people to interview. So making sure that you give yourself enough time to really record everything and that you can deliver each of the episodes on time. how long is your season going to be? Is it going to be ongoing, or is it just going to be a quick series? And if you have guests, who are they going to be? And number one, why are they interesting? And number two, think about why they might be interested in the vlog or the podcast, right? Because if you're trying to start to book them, it's always a two-way street. Because Jason, if I said to you, I've got this idea for a vlog, and it's going to be opera on the streets, and we're going to shock people, what would your reaction be?
Be like, wow, we gotta plan this thing out. Let's do it.
All right. Well, a lot of people, I think, would actually run from that, right? They'd be like, I'm not an opera singer. I feel fear, and I'm not going to do this. You know?
If I had to sing, no, definitely, I'd be like, no way.
So I think it's super helpful thinking about, well, what can we do for them too, so that it's not just what can they do for us. Mm-hmm. And then if you have a specific topic, how will you order each one of those sequences within the topic and arc out your basic storyline? So Jason, if I'm going to task you with planning your vlog.
Yeah.
All right. Your vlog topic is?
Drumming.
Drumming. Okay. And it's your daily beats? Is that what it was called?
Daily beat.
All right. And who would be your audience?
Definitely drummers on YouTube, Instagram drummers, Facebook drummers, just people who like to publish digital content about drumming and beat making. That would be my audience.
Okay. And have you done any sort of research into how big that market is?
Totally. So the demographic that has a lot of people is like guitar centers and people who follow the branding of like music stores, and then people who just want to become famous and make good drum covers, right? Because the cool thing about making drum covers is that you can do it to any song. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a hip hop genre. It could be rock, it could be pop, it could be Motown, it doesn't matter, but people make drum covers to everything. So it's a pretty big group of people.
And would it be America only, or would it be worldwide?
Worldwide.
Yeah, think big. Okay, good. I like that. And does it change what you pick to be worldwide? Like, is there different flavors for different countries, or does it not matter?
I think that's the interesting part. I think that's where the planning comes in, because if we're making videos here, I think we could make songs that are popular here in the United States. Whereas if I want to do a song, say somewhere else, I would have to do some research on the music that they like, and then possibly perform a song that is popular in another country, maybe some K-pop. It just depends on where I would want to take it, but that would definitely go with the researching and planning. Okay.
So when you, in the research and planning then, and it's fair that you may not have done all of this yet, so I'm totally putting you on the spot.
Sure.
Thinking about, okay, so how long would your episode be, you think?
So I think for this particular vlogs, I think they would be between 1 and 2 minutes. I think I would do a section of a song. I wouldn't perform the whole song because I think it can get a little old. And then on the second portion, I would do the interview, right? I would interview the person who's either performed the song as well or who wants to perform it. So in the example I gave with Tony Royster Jr., he has a huge following on YouTube. I would do an interview with him, and then I would merge that with the song that I perform on the drum cover. So a little bit of both.
So you do a beat of the day. You'd start with a beat of like an intro. Then you do a beat of the day. Then you go into an interview with a famous drummer, with a drummer, right?
Yeah.
And obviously in your planning, you would then look at, well, what kinds of people would I want on there? And what kinds of people do I think I can get, and why, right? You've got to think about, if you're going to interview people, why they'd be interested, right?
Right.
And then at the end, you would end with a performance.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. I think we had another comment come in, by the way.
says, sorry to interrupt, but I can't really hear. Can you guys hear? Looks like one person. Yeah, most people can hear, but I think somebody said it's a little bit laggy. Everybody says they can hear for the most part.
Okay, can people give us a thumbs up on if they can hear me? Yep. Okay, great.
Cool.
And I'm assuming they can hear Jason, so I'll try and speak loudly too.
Nadine, I wanted to make a quick point here with the power of planning. So I was thinking about it, and I think that when you're planning something, really what you're doing is there's a power of connecting with other people when you're doing a vlog. So I think also coming up with clever catchphrases, right? Really emphasizing what your channel's about. And I look at it like you have virtual friends, right? When you do vlogs, people follow you, and over time, they really follow you. Like, they really want to know what you're up to, what you're doing. So I think in addition to what we're talking about with planning, I think it's really important to come up with these things that are really unique about yourself, and don't be shy to put those things out there with this power of planning.
That's a great point. It's also testing it on people, right? Like testing. And if you're at a party and you can test some of the catchphrases, and you can test some of the lines even, because even when it's ad lib, you can absolutely script out pieces of it, because you're turning on. It's not that you're a new persona; it's your same persona, but you're larger than life sometimes. So you've got to think about, again, your audience and who you're talking to and what they're going to relate to. And the best way to do that is to test it with your friends or with whoever it is that you think is going to be your audience. Mm-hmm. Right?
Sure.
All right. So in the chat, if you guys can share with us what part of planning you would spend the most amount of time on. I'm just curious. Would it be figuring out an outline of exactly what the format, fleshing out the format a little bit more? Would it be the taglines and branding, right? Or maybe it's the different personality types that you want to include, or the different subject and topic points. Maybe it would be more research-based of the actual whatever you're talking about. But I'm really curious to know what people are saying is they would spend the most amount of time on in this planning, pre-production sort of stage. So
I'll start reading these out if you're ready, Nadine.
Sure.
Okay, cool. So we have people saying the format, idea and theme of the video, planning interviews, research and format, research, inviting guests and who to invite, research, how often releases are, research and topics, format, structure and content, format, research. So a lot of research and a lot of format seem to be the popular amongst the group here. Guest and research, content and guests, content and when to post. So seems like the common denominator here is research and format.
Okay. And I think one of the things that becomes really relevant even in the pre-production phase is thinking about the distribution and also the marketing of how are you going to get to your audience, right? Once you make this and you know who your audience is and why they care about this topic, you should also think about, can you get to those people? Because if you can't get to that audience and you can't market to that audience, you need to know that you're going to be okay with whoever you get, right? So I think it is worthwhile in this very early stage to think about how you might market it and distribute it, and how you might, like, is it on YouTube? Is it on a different platform? And so forth. Because it also then will play into what format you, and the length of the episode. What platform you're going to be on is definitely going to be affected. Is going to affect, the timing. Like, is it a 10-minute? Is it a half an hour? Is what's normal? So I think at this point, one thing I would also add in there that we hadn't listed yet was where you want to distribute it, and think about the marketing that's available within that platform.
Totally.
And also partners, right? If you keep, I think it's really helpful to think about why people care about this and how it can be useful to people, right? So for Guitar Center, for example, they want to sell more drums. So potentially you could write down, hey, I want to go to Guitar Center and see if they'll sponsor some of these episodes, and I'll mention them. It's very specific on brand. I'll mention Guitar Center. Maybe they'll even let me film or let you film in their studio, you know? So there's a lot of things like that if you think about them early can massively impact the end result.
I think that's a good point, Nadine, about the aspect of collaborating, especially once you build some traction with your channel and you start to really pick up your content, you get more followers, whatever platform you end up deciding to go with. Partnering with somebody else and collaborating on a video, now you have two audiences kind of coming together. So that's a great point. I wanted to mention that.
It's almost I don't know how many of you have done a business plan for anything, but it's almost worthwhile doing a little micro business plan in the sense of you think about the audience, like what's the problem that you're solving for them, right? What's the problem? What's the solution? What is the product? Like, what is it, the format of it itself, right? What's your go-to market? What's your distribution channel? What is, who is going to care about this? How are you going to fund it? And thinking about, there's so many tech options available now to pull together really great looking decks, or even just like putting a video together or a demo of what your vlog is going to be, and in free places that you can distribute and start getting some traction, so that you can grow it into something. But I think spending a little bit of time now planning those things out and just thinking about it as a business as well as the sort of a hobby, but it's really a business. I think it really makes it, it gives it an edge over other vlogs. So, and then you also obviously have to think about if this isn't like an annual thing, are there any holidays or special events that you specifically need content for and so forth. So the idea is really you want to be at least 6 weeks ahead of your podcast or your vlog schedule, because you don't want to be stressing.
Yeah. Totally.
And we had a whole nother workshop on this, the power of recording and reflecting, but it is super helpful to record yourself a couple times and reflect back on it. And you shared a really great little tidbit about your time as an intern at Jimmy Kimmel. You want to share that?
Yeah, totally. So I interned at Jimmy Kimmel Live on the live television show. I was there for about a year, and I was an audience coordinator. So I was in the studio during all the interviews when Jimmy Kimmel had his people over. And I made the example yesterday that even Jimmy Kimmel, who recorded on live television every day, he would do a test run right before at 3 p.m. and he would go live at 5 p.m. with the live audience. So at 3 p.m. he would do his whole monologue and go back and just reflect on what worked in his monologue and what didn't work, and made some tweaks. So I think it's really important to do some test runs. Like Lauren Zima says, vlogs are not live. So you can go ahead and record some stuff and see what works and what doesn't, and then make some tweaks, right? Make some adjustments and then see what really works for you, and then go from there. So there's also a power of recording yourself, reflecting it, and then making tweaks along the way so that you can have a really, really, really good vlog at the end of the day. So.
And I will say it's nice to there are a couple of tricks when you're recording yourself, and they don't cost a lot of money. Like even on iPhone and whatnot, you get certain filters that you can add. These days you can buy a 1080 camera and just stick it right on top of your computer, and and see really high fidelity sort of video of yourself. I think having filters is really helpful because I think it's never fun for anyone to sort of see themselves on video. And I think one of the things at first, at least, you get used to it, but it is so important from the self-awareness, because I think what you think you do and the experience of the when you're presenting or public speaking versus watching yourself back is very, very different. And that's why in sports people use it. That's why performers use it a lot. And I think it's really important from the very beginning to be recording yourself and trying different things. And I just want to mention one thing, because it was a different workshop, but I do want to mention when you're recording yourself, just make sure that you are not too harsh on yourself. Be kind to yourself, because I think it's natural to be your own worst critic, but it actually doesn't help you. So try and watch yourself as if you're watching somebody else, or as if you are your biggest fan, whether it's your mom or someone else. And watch yourself with that lens, because, and think more big picture rather than details. Like, what was the experience like? What did it make your audience members feel like? And if you can do that and pick like 25% of the time, you can critique yourself as like how 25%, this is what I want to fix, or the things that I want to tweak, and 75% should be what you liked, things that did work. And that will help boost your self-confidence and will help your planning too with when you're planning out formats and stuff. You can tick and say, yes, I like this piece. I like it when I do this and this and that. So anyway, moving right along. This is the last video of Lauren Zima, and then we're going to open it up. Oh, look, it's a nice little product. She's a great vlog. If anyone has seen it, it's called Roses and Rosé, and I'm a big fan. Lauren's a good friend of mine, and I'm a big fan of The Bachelor. It's kind of my little secret that I only tell some people, but she's got a great vlog on that. So,
hey everybody, I'm Lauren Zima. Welcome to episode 4. So before recording your first episode, you need to write it. Yes, some formats need to have a carefully written script, and others certainly rely more on conversation, but you do still need to do a little bit of writing no matter what. For example, say you plan to interview someone. Well, you will need to find out about them and write questions you want to ask them. Now, you might not use all of your questions. You will want to keep the conversation flowing and see where it takes you. But it's always good to have questions in case the conversation dries up. It's a good backup plan. Now, one thing that makes writing easier is research. The more information you have about a topic, the more things you'll have to write about and talk about. Remember, you don't need to include all of the information that you discover when researching, but having that additional background knowledge will really help your content feel genuine and real and informative. And the information might be relevant, might be interesting, might not be. A good rule to follow is, if you found it interesting, other people probably will too. Remember, this is a topic you're passionate about, and your viewers and audience will be too. Now, this is the same thing for interviews. If you want to know the answer to a question, it's probably a good question to ask the guests on your show. Now, make sure that your guests feel comfortable. Your audience will prefer seeing people feel comfortable and having a natural conversation than something that feels too forced. So always respect your guests and approach them as someone who's on the same level as them, here to talk about what they care about. So whether you're writing questions, making notes, kind of scripting out a little bit of a format for yourself, or just scripting things all together, remember, writing in advance is key.
all right. So I'm going to let you run with this one, Jason.
All right, cool. Sounds good. Do you want me to just kind of read through these or just discuss them?
What are the key points when you're writing an episode? These are obviously, we've talked about how much writing. I think people can read it. We can just go through it, and then maybe we can just discuss certain points of it. But it's really, as you're writing an episode, and knowing, okay, I'll start. having, when you're writing out an episode and you've got your skeleton of a format, right? So you've already figured out, you've got your overall format. Okay, this is going to be an interview, but it's always going to be a bit of everything, right? A lot of different pieces in there. So for Jason's format, for example, he had the intro and the beat of the day, the interview with a drummer, and then the performance. So that's his skeleton, right? And then he has to think about, okay, if my episode is going to be 15 minutes long, how long is each section of this? So as I'm, the biggest part of the script here is going to be the intro, and then the interview with a drummer. Those are going to be the biggest piece, and then the outro. So he'll research the drummer. So pick a drummer, Jason.
Tony Royster Jr.
Okay. Do you happen to know a lot about him?
I know that he became popular at Guitar Center. That's what I know.
Okay. So that's a good lead. So then you would think about the questions that you would ask him. Just out of curiosity, how many questions do you think you should be writing if you want a 10-minute segment with them?
I would say at least 10 questions, at least. But I think that I should have a lot more just in case he's a quick answer.
Let's open that up to chat. I want to know what people think. How many questions should you prepare if you want a 10-minute segment? Let's see what people think.
So we have people saying 10 to 15, 15, 15 to 20, 20 for redundancy, 10 to 15, 15, 10, 15. So it seems like between 10 to 20 is kind of the range that we're getting here. Somebody said 2. Those must be great questions.
So interestingly, I talked to Lauren Zima about this specifically once, and she said to me that she would want at least 20 questions. And the reason for that is if somebody, and also making sure you have highlighted the ones that you really want to ask, but you can also ask it in different ways. So if they're not answering the question that you want them to answer, how do you rephrase the question to try and get to the same result, right? And so to have 20 questions, because if you ask me 10 questions and I'm saying, yep, no, I don't know, like one-word answers, it's not going to give you 10 minutes at all, and you're not getting what you want. So you ask open-ended questions and be able to rephrase the same question, listening to pieces of this or looking, like having researched things that they're excited about in the past. But she said 20 questions is what she would personally go in with for a 10-minute segment. So just because you never want to be in a position, hopefully if you've invited them to your vlog or podcast, they should be excited to be there. But some people, when they're nervous, just don't quite react in the same way. And some people end up clamming up or not answering in open, like with long sentences.
For sure.
So I think it's helpful to have more and just know which ones are your priority.
Yeah. When I was working at Jimmy Kimmel, Nadine, I noticed that Jimmy Kimmel had a whole team of writers who would construct full-on interview questions and some. So he would always have backup questions as well. And his team would put together things that would almost be like a curveball, because obviously Jimmy Kimmel's style was interview style when he would sit down with his guests. But they would do something interesting where they would do curveball questions. And I noticed that it always had to do with food. He would always ask them what they like to cook or what they like to eat, because it's totally relatable. So I think that's kind of cool too. If you're interviewing somebody, always have something that's not always going to be about, for example, for me, if it's drumming, it's not just going to be about the snare drum, about what music, but sometimes add a little bit of a flair that's going to make the person who's being interviewed be like, oh, maybe I could talk about something else. It's okay to add something that is a little exciting or something different to get a different angle. So I wanted to add that as well. And that's a fact that you can take.
That's a great point. I think also that's what makes your podcast unique, or your vlog, right? Yeah, is you don't if you're just asking the same question that everybody else is asking, it becomes monotone and it becomes redundant. Whereas if you're asking something that other people don't ask, like, and that's also thinking about what questions might make your guests relax and might make them laugh maybe a little bit or something. Yeah. So thinking about things like that, I think, are really important. When you've really made the big time, and you've got a producer talking in your earpiece and you're listening actively, usually you and I, as we're starting out, we would not have that. We would just have to prepare it ourselves. We have our list of questions. And like when you go to a party and you're talking to someone, you're listening, but always have a plan of what you where you want it to go and try and steer them toward that. But you have to listen, because sometimes you'll get these gems that they give you. And if you ignore those gems, it's very obvious from the audience's perspective and really uncomfortable to watch.
Totally.
One more thing that I wanted to mention is, and this is kind of a funny personal story. When you're asking a question, make sure you give enough time for your guest to answer, because sometimes it's very hard, especially when you're asking a somewhat uncomfortable question, at least that you feel uncomfortable asking. You want to answer for them because a lot of people, for me, for sure, I want people to feel comfortable. And in the past, we did a show with Chris Harrison of The Bachelor, and he is the king of this. You can ask a question, and then he's quiet, and he lets them answer, and he makes them answer. And I would always want to jump in and help them. And it got to a point where they were like, okay, you need to leave the room because we want the uncomfortable moment, because that's what makes them answer sometimes. But so there is a fine line between making them comfortable. And I think that's the first thing you have to do, is making your guests, if it's an interview question, like if it's an interview format, making people feel comfortable. You're on their side, you're their friend, they can, talk openly with you. But you're also letting them answer, even when it can feel a little uncomfortable.
Totally.
All right. I don't know if anyone had any particular questions on interview, but feel free to just put something in the chat if you do have a question along the way. So for current events, right? So we talked about interview. For current events, you can think about what's happening in line with what's happening recently. What is the news? And so obviously reading newspapers or watching TV shows, whether it's whatever topic it is, you've really just got to stay actively engaged in constant research. And if you're planning 6 weeks in advance, that's where you gotta nail it down a little bit more, because you can't have that 6 weeks, delay on current events. It needs to be right now. So that's the exception to the rule there. Research journalism. This is an interesting one, because I think a lot of the time you should always have a plan, and you should always have a goal in mind of what you think the arc is going to be. But I can tell you that often it doesn't quite go as planned. And you find things out halfway through and you realize, oh my gosh, there's a twist. And it's really important to be open to that. So an example might be, because with any documentary type of research journalism or whatever, when you find out that something, a side angle is suddenly more important than the main story, it's okay to go down that side angle. Like, I don't know if any of you guys watched the TV show, the Netflix show Tiger King. Have you watched that? That didn't start off about him at all, right? That started off completely, like the journalist who was really a part of that was generally looking at exotic animals. And somehow came upon this world of big cats and the people that own them. And it was just so, but it was not supposed to be the arc of their documentary. So I think that a lot of the time, and I don't think he thought he would have a Netflix sort of top hit show. He was really thinking that this would be, a documentary about exotic animals.
We do have a question for us here, if you want to answer this one. So somebody asked, how do you get people to interview on your show?
So number one is when you create your business plan, right? You have a little pitch deck of what it is that you're doing. I think it's really important to think about why people, like, what's the title? What's your audience? Why do they care? And then think about the guests that you have as well, and what can you do for them, right? So I think when you reach out to people, whether it's on social media or you can absolutely on Instagram these days just message people, or you can go through agencies depending on what your topic is. And that's why I think the interview is just harder. It really depends on your topic. So if you're interviewing people at anyone that goes to fun parks, like, you can go to a fun park and find people to interview, right? Whether or not you'll find interesting people is, who knows? But if you're trying to find celebrities, for example, it's going to be a lot harder to get a hold of them. So I think social media is definitely a way that you can get to that. If you can't get to the actual celebrity, sometimes it can be interesting talking to either people around that celebrity. For example, sometimes it can be really funny. I remember watching a vlog of somebody who'd hyped the episode about how he was going to talk to Reese Witherspoon. And then in the actual episode was like, well, I actually couldn't get a hold of Reese Witherspoon, so I got a hold of a different Reese who happens to know of Reese Witherspoon. So we're just going to talk Reese Witherspoon with Reese, not that Reese Witherspoon. And it was just funny, and it was like, so sometimes, just owning the journey of not being able to find someone can also work. But I think if you do get a hold of someone on social media, or you can get a hold of an agent or a manager, that's usually not the best avenue, though, because it's harder to find. You're going to get some people who are interested in it, and you can think, look, here's my platform. Here's how many people, like, I'm on YouTube. I've got this many followers. We're going to use ad marketing, so we have a reach of 500,000, whatever it is. And there are definitely people who can help with the marketing. I would talk about reach for your video or your vlog or your podcast, rather than necessarily active audience, especially if you're starting out. Or you can think about, like, is it something that might speak to them on an emotional level? Like, hey, I'm a student, I'm just finishing this, and I'm putting out a vlog, and I'm really passionate about XYZ. I think it's an important story, and you're a big part of it. Then sometimes it'll play into the emotional part of that guest, and that's how you'll get them. But the trick is not giving up. You'll be surprised, but just believing that you can find someone. Sometimes, the universe will deliver it to you. And you'll randomly bump into that person. You just never know. Like, you have to keep believing. And even when people say no, that doesn't mean that your vlog or your podcast is not going to work. It just means one person said no. Like,
and I think also friends and family, right? If you're just starting and you don't necessarily have an audience, starting with friends and family can help you build some traction, so that in the future, a bigger artist or whoever you want to get on to say, okay, now you have an audience. Now I'm very willing to come on your show. But starting somewhere, I think, is key. So, if you're doing music, local musicians, like Nadine, like you mentioned, like influencers that are not necessarily the big celebrities, but like micro influencers, I think in a lot of ways it's a win-win, because they're more than happy to get some more audience as well. So even if it means starting small, local musicians, local artists, friends and family who have talent and are willing to come on, there we go. That's a start as well.
I think it's also, it's okay to be gutsy too. Like sometimes it's going to feel uncomfortable to ask people to come on board, but it shows a lot of stamina. And so for me, if it's, for example, somebody who's an athlete, right, going to the place and maybe buying a ticket to whatever the game is or whatever, and then finding out if there's a place that you can wait after the fact, and then be able to say, hey, and then also connect with them afterwards on social media. I think that's another point. Or if you happen to see someone across the room in a restaurant, in LA, obviously that can happen often. Be polite about it. Don't go up to them in the middle of their dinner necessarily, or like if they're going to the restroom. There are always boundaries, but I think finding moments, and it's okay to feel the fear and do it anyway, right? Because the worst thing they can do is say no.
Right.
And
totally.
they won't ever remember it. So,
Nadine, really quick here. We have a message from the grid to everyone saying, we want to know what you think. Fill out the very short survey and you'll be automatically entered into the grid raffle. We're giving away 3 pair of Beat headphones on Friday during the grid finale, and every student who fills out the survey is eligible to win. So I just wanted to throw that out there that the grid did put that out. So after this is finished, make sure to do the survey too.
And please rate us highly. So this is actually, I thought we already had the last. Maybe there is one more. Hang on, let me just see what this is. Hang on one sec.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lauren Zima. Thanks for joining me for episode 5. Okay, you have done it. It's time to record your first episode. Now, remember, you're prepared for this. You know the structure of your show. You've worked on it. You've scripted things out and written things beforehand. You've even done a trial run through. So recording is going to be a breeze. If you're recording a podcast, you can keep your script handy, and you want to make sure you don't sound like you're reading things. You want to sound conversational, not robotic. So practice reading it a few times before recording. And if you're making a vlog, you can make some prompts to help you remember what you're going to say and stay on track without getting too rambly. It's easy. Just get a big sheet of paper and write some main points, some bullet points on it, and place it beside your camera. That way you can glance at things and still seem like you're looking in the general direction of the camera. And remember, if you do need to look at your notes, it's okay. That seems natural. You can also record as many times as you want. You're not live, so don't worry about making a mistake. You can always edit things later. Now relax, take your time, and enjoy. This is about a topic you're passionate about. You've worked on this so hard. It's going to be an awesome experience that you learn so much from. Thanks for joining me, and good luck, guys.
All right, so what we're going to leave you with, I know we've only got like 5 minutes left. Time flies when you're having fun. We're going to leave you with the knowledge that anyone who does create a vlog and a podcast, and think about, obviously this is all about driving creativity, so you can think about what drives your creativity and what drives your inspiration, and use that for your topic and so forth. And if you do create a blog or a podcast, we would love to know about it. We will certainly follow and help amplify an audience, hopefully for you. So you can tag us at WURRLY, so it's at WURRLY. And if nothing else, you'll have one extra audience member who's cheering you on. So if anyone has any other questions or anything else, feel free to put it in the chat. But
everybody put down what they came up with, like the title of their episode, to see what their blog or podcast would be. I'm actually very curious.
Yeah.
If you guys want to add in the comment section what your blog and podcast would be, I would love to read that out too.
Now people are getting shy. It's 2 minutes.
We have some now.
Sports.
Don't be shy.
So if there's sports, for example, right, there's lots of different types of sporting topics and whatnot. But I think you can go anywhere from what motivates somebody to enter a sport, and so you can either interview like very famous sports people, or up and comers are going to be easier for you to find. Another way to pull in like celebrity names might be to show something, talk about somebody who is a celebrity, but then go to somebody who was inspired by that celebrity. So that can be great. So baseball, basketball, and football, I see from Hugo.
An interesting one here about helping the community. I think that's a really interesting angle too. That'd be really, really cool. That's a great angle and so needed right now. Exactly. Right? Simple. I love that. I wrote a book, so I love that one. Activism, that's really, really interesting. I like that. Justice. These are some really interesting topics. I would love to watch some of these. This is cool. Yeah, and these days I think there is just a lot of it's so easy just to start videoing yourself and putting things together and editing it even yourself. And with platforms like basketball, I was reading. With platforms like YouTube and even Quibi and things like that, but there's a lot of new sort of platforms, so a lot of which are free to distribute. And if you start getting some traction, then you can go to these other platforms and say, how can we, can we get some budget or get financing and get producers involved and so forth. So this has been really fun. It's been a really fun workshop, and I've loved hearing everybody's ideas. And as I said, here, I should type it in here. So we're on, are we WURRLYedu or Whirly? We're on Whirly, right, for YouTube? Yeah, Whirly. Okay, great. So at Whirly, if you guys want to tag us to anything that you guys post, and we'll be sure to make sure that we like it and that we watch it. And if possible, we'll share it with our community too. So that's our Instagram as well. So if you guys want to DM us any content or anything you want some exposure to, you could. Somebody asked, where do we tag? So when you can, once you've uploaded your video, you can share it with people. So you can share it with either other users, and it's actually a great way to get word out about whatever content you're uploading. We're out of time. It's 3:02. So, but I mean, I know that the last question was, can you help share other platforms? Honestly, they're changing all the time. The best thing to do is start researching vlogs. Literally, if you Google just a topic and vlog or a podcast, there's a million different platforms for podcasts available. When do we turn it in what day? What does that mean? When do we turn it in what day? If they make the vlog, who do they turn it into? Like, you guys could just send it to us. Send it to Whirly. Go to Whirly Instagram. That's probably the best way, Whirly or WURRLYedu. You could DM us your link to your YouTube link, or you could just send it directly to us, either via Facebook, Instagram. Everything is Whirly or WURRLYedu. They're two different channels. So anything that you send there, or Nadine. There you go. I just gave you all my email, so try not to flood it. No, but yeah, you can also send it to us. We are definitely always wanting to hear what people are doing, and if we can be helpful, we always will be. So we're just really excited to see. There's been so much amazing content that's been created by people. For a pretty low budget, often. Really, just a creative idea is always better than a high budget slick format, so we definitely want to hear from you. Thank you again for having us.